Hey guys, it's Matt. This is the Proof of notnilC series, also / Fish in a Barrel reality show, because my mood is really, really bad. It will improve, I'm sure. As I know I'm talking to you, it will get lighter, as it always does. The topic here is the intentional destruction and ruination of college football. The notnilC asshole is out to destroy everything that was once good. And for those that aren't thrilled with this topic, I remind you, this is Proof of notnilC. It's about your spiritual adversary and its tactics. It's not about college football. That's just one more example of how it's out to ruin everything and completely mold and transform society so spiritual beings can't do what they're supposed to do here. There was a comment a few videos back. I hope my mood improves. You never give any positive. It's all negative. Oh, and every time you get a comment like that, I've never heard of the YouTube avatar. I've never seen the person before. Oh, my message is typically negative? Really? With the last 150 videos, maybe 100 out of 150 saying, this is the best news of all time. Reality actually breaking down before our eyes is the best news of all time because in a way, it tells you the immortal nature of yourself. Yeah, I'm just all negative. Oh boy, sorry. My mood usually improves by now, and it's just a minute in. It'll take a few minutes. Hey, AI Overview. Can college football players be paid by the universities and schools today? Oh, look, thanks for the quick answer, AI Overview. No.
It says, no. College football players are not currently paid salaries directly by their schools.
However, oh shit, there's a however. I was terrified when I saw this. However, the NCAA group of monsters and the Power 5 conferences have reached an agreement that will allow schools to begin paying athletes directly in the fall of 2025. That's just next fall to you and me. They just slid it right under everybody's noses. Oh my God. So for anybody that doesn't want to stick around, like, what's this college football horse shit? Okay, let me summarize it for you. I hope you come back in the next video. It was a 5-year destruction of college football. They did it in just 5 years. Maybe I'm off by a year or two, but does it really matter? Put your hands out like the My Cousin Vinny prosecutor. Identical. They did it in 5 years. They started with the transfer portal. Here's the history of it in 2 minutes or less. For about the last 50 years, a student athlete could transfer if they wanted to go play football for the Alabama Crimson Tide, fine. But you had to sit out a year, had to wait a year. The reason for this kind of made sense, that you committed to your first school and see, you're not getting nothing. They're not just delivering comic books in front of your door. You're getting full scholarship, which today is worth $25,000 to $50,000 a year. It's not just the ability to go to classes, room and board, books, meal plan, housing, etc., all paid for. In essence, that's a pretty good payment for the student athlete. And it's not just college football players, if anybody's a little bit out of the loop on this. Everybody on the women's softball team, the starters are on scholarship. The fencing team, if it's a top 20 fencing team, on scholarship. There are 50 sports where most of the players are on scholarship, where for every other sport except football, basketball, and a few others, nobody comes out. But that's that Title IX. Everybody has to be treated the same. If you're a fencer, you get the same as if you're the star running back. That makes sense. Whatever. Let's just leave all that other horse shit behind. So again, going back decades and decades, you had to sit out a year if you transferred. Then I'm not sure when it was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It doesn't matter. In recent history, you don't have to sit out a year anymore. So someone said, didn't that player on Oregon play for UCLA last year? Oh, you don't have to sit out a year. You're allowed to transfer once, and everybody accepted it. And why not accept it, right? Makes sense, I guess. Okay, fine. You're allowed one transfer. You don't have to wait a year. Maybe some would consider that to be a little punitive, even though you did get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars via scholarship from the school that you committed to, but whatever. Okay, fine. But then it's just like Bob Sugar and Jerry Maguire. You let that snake in the door. Once the notnilC gets that door cracked, once you hand a little Halloween treat, a little, fun size piece of shit out the door to the trick-or-treaters, then they slam it open. We want more. We're going to demand more. Once you let that Bob Sugar NCAA notnilC snake in the door, then it just completely gets out of control. And they take liberty. What used to get out of control in Albert Pike's day when they'd planned it, they say it would take 100 years for the people to accept this. Now they say, oh, what used to take 100 years now will take 5 because the population's a bunch of idiots. So now they got their little tentacles in the door. And then, now it's unlimited transfer. Unlimited transfer. You could go to Alabama and play next year, and then you could transfer to LSU, then you could transfer to UCLA. Unlimited transfer. And there are many players, if you watch, say, college football on Saturday on television, many players are at their 3rd or 4th school.
It's like, I don't like the coach. I don't like the way you're treating me. I don't like this locker room. It's not painted the right color. I'm transferring. And they have a portal. They twice a year, there's a portal of 15 days, and you can put your name in the portal. And if UCLA or Stanford or Penn State or whoever says, oh, I'm interested in you, they can pick you up like some sort of free agent. Well, wait a second. They've been telling us for 50 years it's about the student athlete and primarily about the student, primarily about getting an education. How about that horse shit that they fed us for 50 years about education first? The NCAA, you group of monsters. Are you listening? They've proven 100%, not 99%, 100% proven they don't give one shit about education. Perhaps the main thing that supports the Proof of notnilC series, that there is this thing here working against you, is how it implements thousands of things every year in society that not nobody asked for, that nobody wants. If you tap the person on the street, they don't give a shit, they don't get involved. But if you ask the dummy on the street, they would say they don't want it. And of course, in discussing Proof of notnilC, it's not just about college football. It's about every single facet of society. Just throw a dart. Here you go. Is it just California that allows 14-year-old girls to get the morning after pill without parental consent? I'm sure lots of states have followed along. California did this 8 to 10 to 12 years ago. So if you asked anybody on the street, you're going to get that group of radical nut jobs that would say, oh, yeah, we want that. 90% of the population or more would say, no, 14-year-olds should not be able to get any form of birth control, including the morning after abortion pill, without parental consent. Maybe they would say, 16 or 17 or 18, but most would say no for 14-year-old. That's just 2 years off 12, if I have to remind you of that. But yet it exists. All of this stuff happens all over society that not just that no one asked for, that 90% of people don't want. But we're told that the politicians and the senators and the Congress people are out to try to serve their constituents and they care about the next vote. There are thousands of things, and it's things like this, and it's happening again in college football. Let's just go right back to the most basic example. If you talk to somebody on the street a few years ago and say, do you think colleges should pay, should have to put millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars aside to pay their players, their football players, their basketball players, etc.? The person on the street would say, well, they still get scholarships, right? Worth in total about $200,000 to $250,000 or so. Yeah, they still get the scholarships, the meal plan, the room and board. Most people in the street would say, well, no. Why? And wouldn't paying them, putting the hundreds of millions aside, doesn't that take away scholarship money for those in need that just want to go to school or prevent them? I mean, we know that there is never a shortage of money with notnilC, but the person on the street doesn't understand that. They would say, well, if they have to cough up $100 million in total, whatever, it soon will be hundreds of millions, of course. It will soon get out of control. Of course it will. Just like baseball salaries and football salaries, and Mahomes wants to renegotiate. I'm only making $450 million over 7 years. I want to renegotiate. And that monster that plays for the Philadelphia Phillies, whatever his name is, and he had a $300 million salary over 5 or 6 or 7 years, wanted to renegotiate because it should be more, because some jackass on the Dodgers is getting $700 million. Hold your cereal down. Don't toss it up all over your table. Hold your pancakes down. Yeah, I'm not joking. Some baseball player for the Dodgers, roughly $700 million over I don't know how many years. Does it matter over how many years? If it was over 100 years, it would be quite a bit. It doesn't really matter. $700 million. Of course, it will soon reach $1 billion. This is a notnilC tactic. We'll talk about it later. But let's not lose the point of what I'm trying to do here. If you tap anybody on the street, do you think colleges should put these hundreds of millions aside to have to pay their athletes directly as if they're professionals? How many people out of 10 would say yes? One? Let's just say conservatively 90% would say, well, no. If you remind them they're getting $250,000 scholarship, and they also have access to what's called NIL. If Nike wants to say, hey, come appear in my commercial and I'll pay you $300,000 for 10 seconds to appear in my commercial, they can take Nike money. Many of you might not be aware of that, per this NIL, name, image, likeness. Okay, remember that name, image, likeness was nil. We'll look at the real meaning of nil a little bit later. They can go out and do ads for car dealerships. See, 6-7 years ago, if you did an ad and a car dealership in Philadelphia paid a Penn State college football player or a Temple football player $40,000 to appear in a car ad, they would lose their academic eligibility. They wouldn't be able to play football anymore. So that changed, and that actually makes sense to me. I'm all for, when in doubt, pure freedom. If it's not on the university's time and not interfering with what they do at the university, if they just want to go appear in an advertisement and get paid on the side, well, that's fine. It has nothing to do with the university. I'm all for that. But that they use that to create a situation, to create the chaos where now the schools will be forced to have to pay the players directly. And I'll tell you how that came to be, all an obvious notnilC tactic. Greg and I talked 3 or 4 years ago. This NIL money was getting so out of control, and I'll talk about a little bit later how it's not as simple as a player goes out to a car dealer and says, I can be in your ad to sell used cars here and you pay me $20,000. It's much more complicated than that. It's basically almost pay to play now, but they're going to make it official apparently next year with the money for the players coming directly from the bursar office of the university, where now it's roundabout pay to play. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. The point of proof of notnilC, where we are now, is it's things that are implemented all the time, every week, that nobody wants. So 90%, let's just continue this, and Matt, I'll stop getting sidetracked. I apologize. 90% would say on the street, the people, no. If they have to put hundreds of millions of dollars aside, then the person on the street would think that money then is taken out of the hands of somebody that's truly in need that just wants to go to school. Okay? The populations don't want it. Does the school want to pay players? Well, if the school had their choice, they would just say, yeah, I'd like to just have $100 million blown every year, where for the last 70 years we didn't have to pay them anything but the scholarship, which really cost them nothing other than the meal plan. I mean, they already had the dorms built. The classes are already there. They just have to sit in the back of the class, and they didn't go to class anyway. You know what I mean? So that doesn't really cost them anything. The universities don't want it. The people don't want it. Well, who would, of all the different groups or constituents, who wants to pay college players? No one except the players and their agents. Well, what if everybody else over here that controls everything, that has apparently all the power, the universities themselves, they own the buildings, they own the land, nobody wants it. It's not backed by the people and the masses. It's not backed by the voters, just the kids want it. Well, so what cloud is that? The kids would say, yeah, I'd like to be paid. Of course the kids want to be paid. Well, who are you? What, you have no say. But see, it doesn't, but yet it happens. Greg and I talked years ago. We knew it would happen. We knew the NIL would eventually get to the payment directly from the universities. And I'll tell you how that came to be. We just saw how obvious it was what was being set up to happen in the future. Now, remember, we've talked about 2 things thus far: the ability to just transfer all over the place and act like a free agent, the NIL money, name, image, likeness, where they can get paid now on the side for commercials, whatever they do, and then the eventual turning that into the colleges paying the players directly. Now, these seem like separate things, right? What would the transfer portal have to do with? It's all, of course, it is one gigantic notnilC strategy. Of course, everybody, you're just, I heard about you. You're one of those people. It's all coordinated. One of the main giveaways of this coordination, and if you're not a watcher of college football, it'll be hard for me to express how strange this was. If you watch, you'll know. About 4 years ago, roughly 4 years ago, Every time somebody made a tackle on the college football field that transferred from another school, the announcers doing the television broadcast would announce where they transferred from. It was so horribly artificial. It was bordering on pathetic and cringeworthy. Great play by Sam Harrison, transfer just in from Oregon. Every single time, I can't stress it to you enough, almost every single time a play was made by somebody that transferred, that came from another school, they said every time, incredible move to juke that defensive lineman from the transfer from Penn State. Every time. Now, there's no doubt. Now, I'm not no doubt, because I'm a big believer in what you would call the frequency or the download at this point. In case this type of presentation makes it out to like normal people listening, I don't want it to get too strange, so I'll hold back that sort of commentary. So it is possible, but there's no doubt, if you don't leave those types of things on the table, that these announcers were told specifically, all 100 of them, across all of college football, to mention every single time where they transferred from. Now, that is so nefarious. It's so sick. Okay, if anybody's struggling, what's it doing? It's reminding everybody, including every high school kid watching that wants to play for LSU or the Florida Gators someday, and it's every kid in junior high, everybody watching. It's a reminder that not only can you transfer, but everybody's doing it. Oh, look, it's the subconscious. The notnilC is an expert at unconscious and subconscious manipulation. Hey, it's cool. Everybody's doing it. The announcers mention it every time like it's something that should be looked up to, or it's something very admirable. Great play from the transfer from USC. It's just getting in the head that everybody's doing it. You hear it like 100 times a game. The amount of kids transferring, it's sick. It's absolutely sick. And all these notnilC shenanigans all go together, with the outcome being it wants college football, just like pro football. It wants to destroy in that manner. Okay, we'll get a little bit later get to what is the notnilC really up to in doing all this. Let's just stick to giving you the details as to how this all unfolded, because we're not quite done the details. So I remember talking to Greg maybe 4 years ago, saying, isn't it strange and it's so blatant and artificial how the announcer has to mention whoever made the play on the field where they just transferred from? And Greg was like, no doubt, they're told, and they're coached, of course, told to push this for some reason. And the last thing that's worth mentioning about transfers, if anybody's wondering, it seems as of now you can't transfer mid-season. Can't play for Ohio State in October and Michigan in November. To at least wait for these transfer portals so it doesn't happen in the middle of the year. There's 2 15-day windows, 2 transfer portals, where then at the portal, you can, when the portal's open twice a year, you can jump in and go wherever you want. Unlimited transfers. I think there are some kids that have been to 5 schools. Yeah, that's really about the education, but it's not mid-season. Well, they'll probably change that. They probably will change that, although that doesn't even happen. Well, it does happen in the NFL via trade. Will there be trades? Will Penn State trade 2 linebackers and an offensive lineman to Michigan in the middle of October for 2 defensive backs and a quarterback? It's coming, probably. The notnilC, it's never satisfied in terms of its destruction. It's the Terminator. It never stops. It will take whatever the people will give it, and it knows now that people will just bow down and give it everything it wants. So if anything were real, or circumstances were normal and everything unfolded organically, you might have an announcer once or twice a game saying, oh, that was a great pickup from USC. LSU must be very happy that the transfer occurred. Just a mention or two of transfer, maybe? That's all anybody would do. It wouldn't happen on every single play where there was a transfer. It's so obvious, yet the people, what do the regular guy down the street here, what does he think or she think as they're watching college football? Do they see any of it? Do they just think it's a little strange that the announcer mentions 40 or 50 times a game where the person transferred in from? I mean, did they even notice any bit of it? Who knows how gone people are? But if anything were real, the announcers might mention it once or twice a game. That's it. They wouldn't really care. Why does the person's playing for Iowa? Why would they care where they were last year? Why would that have to be mentioned? What do the announcers even think? Right from the little ones all the way up to the ones making $20, $30 million a year like Chris Fowler, they all do it every single time. What do the announcers even think? They certainly got a memo of some kind, and do they just go along with the bullshit excuses and reasons on the memo? The NCAA would like to reach out to announcers of college football and thank you for your service. We want to make sure you emphasize that players are transferring because the transfer portal gives new opportunities to kids that feel they are stuck. Or, in other words, is it just some bullshit justification to announcer, please mention where the player transferred from, because we want to keep reminding the NCAA, quote, student athlete body that they're able to transfer because the transfer portal is relatively new. We'd appreciate if you keep mentioning it just to remind student athletes that they have options. And then the announcers just read this and they don't think anything of it. Oh, that makes sense. I'll just make sure I mention it every time. That's it? I mean, doesn't one of them just say, well, we've been doing this now for 4 years. Why do I have to keep mentioning that? Okay, I'm being repetitive. Imagine how it is watching a game. Now, regarding proof of notnilC, here's a general tactic that the notnilC uses to perfection, not just here, in thousands or tens of thousands of different areas. There's always a court order. The notnilC can use its courts to basically do anything in society short of somebody that every time they take a bite of an apple on the street have to stop, unzip their pants, and stick their head up their own ass. Short of that, short of that, the people accept anything. A court order now sets legal precedents. See, that's what happens. See, they use a case. They know what they're going to impose on society. They put forth some bullshit case. So starting many years ago, I'm sure there was a court case that it's not legal to force a student to sit out a year if they transfer. And there was a case, and then a judge rules, and then now you have legal precedent. And the universities say, we don't want to have to do this, but the law has spoken. There's legal precedent, so we have to do this. Every time they take an inch and the trenches are moved a little bit forward in the trench warfare, it's all done via legal case and a legal win without an appeal. And we don't want the schools would say, we don't want to have to pay players. Even that, it's legal cases and legal wins. Well, the notnilC can get any legal result from any corrupt judge that it wants. If anything were real, let's just back up and go back to the absolute basics in this situation. Does the people in the street want the colleges paying players? No. Do the colleges? I mean, you some of you would say, yeah, we understand notnilC. I don't know who this video is going to get out to. Let's just try to keep this presentation for the general public. If things were real, would the universities want to pay players? Of course not. Would they want this? Do they want their players just transferring in and out where coaches can't even hold on to players? And you say one little thing that the player doesn't like, or you don't play them enough and they just immediately leave you for another school. Does the school want that? Do the coaches want that? Does anybody but the students that should have no power, the athletes, the 18-year-olds that should have no power are getting everything they want? They have no say because it's what notnilC wants in the destruction of the sport itself. If anything were real, the universities would have gotten together 7 or 8 years ago, and somebody would have had a clue. And if they weren't part of notnilC and they weren't on the frequency, on the download, somebody would have said, we see where this is going and we need to put a stop to it now. My school is $55,000 a year, and over the course of 4 years, it's possible via meal plans and everything, scholarship will amount to $250,000, at least for my school, per player. Now, that's adequate compensation. You people in this room, yeah, it's not a collusion. It's just people meeting together and saying, we need to make sure this doesn't get out of control. We need to make sure that the rules on the NIL money, the name, image, likeness, aren't so vague that it turns into a case where the universities are going to say, we're now forced basically to pay players because of the legal rulings and the bogus cases, and also this NIL. Let me just back up. The NIL money was supposed to be, not nilC knew what it would evolve into. It was supposed to be a great player goes out and Nike pays them for an ad, or even a local player, a car dealer, pays them $20,000 to appear in an ad. Of course, if you go do a commercial, you should get paid. Why not? I'm fine with that. I'm sure you are. But it was meant to get out of control. Greg has been researching this NIL a lot more than I have. And you have just these booster organizations, whatever that is, punky boosters, which are basically just rich alumni that want the greatest players to come play for the university. And okay, they're getting, the running back for the school is getting NIL money, name, image, likeness, through this booster organization of alumni, which is not really attached to the school, but it is. You say, well, if the Texas quarterback, for example, the Texas Longhorn quarterback appears in a Dr. Pepper ad with Brian Bosworth. I don't know what he makes. Let's just say he makes $500,000. Who knows? Who cares? Fine. That's fine by me. It's probably fine by you. If a direct payment from Dr. Pepper to Brandon Hewer or whatever his name is fine. But all these players and all these schools are being paid through the NIL, which should be working for ads and things like that, name, image, likeness. But what happens is these good players in all of these schools are getting this money, NIL, name, image, likeness money, but you never see what they're doing for the money. For example, Nicholas Singleton, I think, is the Penn State running back. I'm sure a marquee player like that, whatever they make through NIL, $1 million a year, I have no idea, because they keep it very quiet. You can't find out information on this. It's extremely quiet. That's another notnilC and proof of notnilC giveaway. But I would say, well, if he's getting $1 million, I don't see him in any advertisements. I don't watch much TV, but I don't see him on the back of a magazine. I don't see him earning his money, in other words. Greg says this money's coming from the booster or some alumni group that's just basically like almost funneling university money through the booster, where maybe his name is on a jersey or something that nobody even sees, and that's their excuse to get. I'm sorry to pick on Nicholas Singleton. Maybe he's the most legit guy in the world, and it doesn't mean it. Whether it's not up to him. If you're playing for some 18-year-old is playing for some college team, and per legal NCAA rules, somebody's offering millions of dollars just to have your name scribbled on the inside of a jersey. Like, why would you care? It's not his issue. Take the money. Why not? It's not on the players at all. It's on the corrupt NCAA, and it's on notnilC. So the point is, you never see what they're doing to earn this money. So Greg would say they're not earning the money. It's just an excuse. This NIL is an excuse just to pay players. If they're going to officially pay players from the university direct bank accounts, which say from the bursar office, Greg would say, my buddy who has consulted me in a lot of different areas of truth, he would say, well, it's doing it now. It's just a roundabout fashion. And the universities then would say, well, we don't want to pay the players, but see, we're almost forced to, because this NIL is so screwed up, and it's getting so corrupt. We have to rein it back in, and everybody will go along with it because they'll put like a salary cap on it. This NIL money is completely out of control, and it's corrupt and dirty now. You want the dirtiest universities to rise up to the top? We need to control it. They'll say. They'll do exactly what notnilC wants under this guise. They'll say, we have to then put $50 million aside or whatever it is per year and pay the players directly. Then see, we can control it, and the NCAA can monitor it. See, we don't want to do this, but we're forced to do it. And via these court decisions that they'll say that we had no part of, brought this to a head. The notnilC is genius. All of it to ruin the sport, meaning as you move a pure sport, where in the amateur sport of, say, the Olympics, what it was 25 or 30 years ago, as you move pure sport towards the Dodgers baseball player making $700 million, as you move it into that realm of notnilC materialism, you destroy it, you dirty it, you taint it. I'm not sure we're going to get into all that. What is notnilC really up to? I mean, again, I'm not sure who this video is going to get out to. Maybe we'll table that discussion for another time. But it's about intentional destruction. Okay, I know that if anybody's stumbling upon this video, that is the most insane thing you've ever heard. Well, which part of what I'm presenting, that conclusion might seem insane to you, but which part of what I've presented here was insane, didn't make sense to you? That, like the part that nobody wants it, yet things are happening that nobody wants, yet somehow it happens. So every part of this presentation, even if somebody stumbled upon this video, makes sense, but the conclusion's insane. So everything makes sense and everything was rational, yet in the conclusion, I just went insane. Maybe there's some things, if you stumbled upon this, you don't know about reality. And the conclusion isn't as insane as you think if you look into these things. So back to the transfers for a few minutes. Of course, we've been talking about college football, but I want to remind you, if it wasn't apparent, that, of course, if you're doing it for football, then everybody has to be allowed to transfer because these universities, liberal universities, are all about equality. So, of course, it's happening in basketball, jumping around schools, sometimes year to year. And women's softball, fencing, wrestling, water polo, field hockey. I mean, sports literally where 10 people go out and watch. They have to be allowed to transfer too. It's going on everywhere across all sports. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this, yet it's proof of notnilC. It exists. Greg and I have talked for years about this. If anything were real, it's like the section of my old book, if the world were real, this wouldn't exist. What are the chances of this? That whole middle section of the old book gives away basically a fake reality. If anything were real, the top 20 university presidents and provosts, whatever that is, of the top universities representing the big 5 conferences would have had a meeting 5 years ago. And the theme of the meeting would be, we can't allow this to get out of control, and we care about the student part, right, and student athlete, lest we forget that that's what they hung their hat on for the last 50 years, the student part. And now in just 5 years, it's all being abandoned. So then this meeting of the top presidents of the top universities, Texas Longhorns, Michigan Wolverines, LSU Tigers, Alabama Crimson Tide, all the big schools would say, look, okay, no longer fine. There doesn't have to be a year. You have to sit out if you transfer. And there was those court cases, fine. But here's what we're going to draw the line here. Something reasonable. I don't know. 2 transfers. One transfer, to me, one immediate transfer, that's what Greg and I would decide on, but that's not going to be good enough compared to where they took it. A middle of the road compared to the insane asylum place that they took it would be you're allowed 2 transfers. That's too much to me. One immediate transfer through a portal, but 2, fine. I'm telling you, I can't tell. If you add up all sports, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of quote student athletes are on their 3rd or 4th school. Don, I heard you're transferring once the portal opens, once the season ends. Well, I'm transferring. Well, I thought you're just a few credits away from your degree. Fuck that. I'm here to play sports. Did you say degree? That's like a Ray Liotta fake laugh. You're just a few credits away from a degree. This degree is just to play sports. If the NCAA, if you're listening to the words coming out of my mouth, you better never mention ever again, you monsters, that you care about the student part and the student athlete jumping around school to school. What about the relationships left behind, or even boyfriends and girlfriends? Greg and I talk about that. All this, doesn't the kid at this university have like a girlfriend that he doesn't want to leave? It's not like he's going to get all these new opportunities going to play for Ohio State. He's coming from LSU. He's coming from UCLA. If you're good, the pros are going to notice you wherever you are. Why do they even? It's almost like proof of notnilC in the download, how the students are jumping around thinking there's going to be these new opportunities when they have the same opportunity. They're on the same amount of TV where they were before. It just doesn't make any sense. It's the whole, well, let's not slide this conversation into all of reality's breaking down. We know that. So if I had to make a case for proof of notnilC, not that I need to for most of the people listening to this, but it could get out to 1 or 2 people. We can only hope. Let's say it's first and foremost a series of things that no party wants yet exists. The paying of players next year. Do the people want it? No. Do the fans want it? The ones that actually sit in the seats? No. Does the school want to pay out? Would they want to pay out $100 million where 2 years ago they didn't have to? No. None of the main parties that have power and clout want it. So how does it exist? Is there anybody listening to me that wants to remind me that the athletes on the field want it? Yeah, I mentioned that. The kids, the 18-year-olds want to be paid, of course. And I said, well, what clout do they have? Is anybody listening to me thinking they have say of any kind? If all the universities band together and just say, we are not paying players, period, what are they going to do? They're all going to go play in Europe? They're all going to leave the United States? They don't have a say, the 18 and 19-year-olds. I mean, if anybody's thinking that they have clout or influence, you've got to be kidding me. So the notnilC can just fall back on some court victories, saying now the universities have to pay, and the universities will say, oh, because a couple court cases in West Virginia that set precedent, we all have to cough up billions of dollars over the next few years. I guess we'll just have to do it. It just doesn't make any sense, folks. If anything were real, they would band together and say, under no circumstances are we paying the kids to play football, because if we pay football, then all of a sudden the softball players will want to be paid and the fencers will want to be paid. It'll get it's already out of control. If anything were real, they would have drawn a line in the sand and say, absolutely not. And they would have made the NIL rules. If anybody's screaming at me, well, it's pay to play now. Well, yeah, Greg and I have talked about this in 20 minutes. Book us into, I haven't done this for a while. You book us into the room. Book me and Greg into a room, a Best Western with a drippy faucet. Inside of 20 minutes, we could set down clear and fair NIL rules. So there wouldn't be any opportunity for corruption or nefarious involvement, whatever that means. You could say, well, fine, name, image, likeness. If you're getting paid by a corporation, you have to show that you actually did the work. You have to appear in an ad, at least. Your name has to be on the jersey. You have to do work for it. It can't be some vague payment through a alumni booster where they're just giving you the money. You don't think it wouldn't be within 15 minutes with you, me, and Greg book us into the room? You don't think we could set the rules down so they're crystal clear? The rules existed for the past 70 years where they can't just say, hey, take this payment. It's not that hard. Okay, it's not that hard. The notnilC has created this situation because it has an outcome that it wants. And the outcome that it wants is the schools pay the players, and then just like the pros, it gets completely out of control with collectively billions of dollars sloshing around. Why the notnilC is interested in that? Let's table that to let's say, a midnight reality show. So if I was making a closing argument in front of a jury, I would say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I've said some strange things. This is called proof of notnilC. And what is that? All I can do is list out many things that nobody wants, yet somehow exists or will exist. So this is the real world where everything makes sense, right? I'm going to list out everything that's happening that nobody wants, yet somehow exists or will exist. It's not just the paying of players, the transfer portal. Again, let's do it one more time. Does the universities want kids going year to year to year to year, unlimited, school, different school, move in here, move there? Does any school, does any coach want that? No. Yet it exists. Why would the NCAA want that or allow that? Not just basic rules on just one or two transfers. Does the NCAA and those monsters, hopefully that will get this transcript, which they won't, but I really wish they would, do they believe that facilitates getting a degree and learning, packing your bags once a year and making all new friends and, oh, Matt, the credits transfer. Oh, I had no idea. Of course, to facilitate the ease of just changing schools, I'm sure the credits transfer easily. When in 25 to 30 years ago, that was not the case. I remember my cousin had real problems in a certain school, and there were many classes that he passed, and he could not get some credits transferred back to the East Coast school and had to do it over again. It was very difficult, but notnilC, it's going to facilitate the jumping around, and even right down to what the announcers say during the game. Great play for the transfer from Colorado State. Right down to what the announcers say. All facilitate this. Yet nobody wants it, and everybody Everyone would have to agree. This in no way supports a student athlete, what it's supposed to be. They always said for 50 years, these frauds hung their hat that the student part is first and the athlete is second. And there's only so many, it's such a joke. It's so hypocritical. So many hours they can practice, and only so many hours a day they can look at the playbook or do film study with the coaches because they're students first. Yet they allow all this other nonsense. Not one bit of it has anything to do with actually learning anything. Now, nobody's probably trusted the NCAA for 30 years, but it's all out in the open now. How nefarious, how evil, yes, evil. The NCAA has proven to be the biggest group of hypocritical monsters of all time. I don't have guests here at Quantum of Conscience. When was the last guest I had? But boy, if I could get to interview one of the NCAA board or president, oh my gosh, the fun I would have with that little monster. I would say, name one thing you're doing for the young person that benefits the young person, the student, to facilitate education. One thing. Allowing unlimited I mean, we've been over it, okay? There's no reason to go over it again. Not one thing lines up with what's in the best interest of the young person. No, they don't need to transfer 4 or 5 times. If they're having a bad experience at the university or whatever, yeah, they should be allowed to go somewhere else once, maybe twice. Okay, more than that, even one time is reasonable because remember, they're not getting nothing. They're taking basically, they're under contract to a degree with the university that they committed to for full scholarship. It's a free education, folks. That's not nothing. And those that are tremendously good at their sport will go pro and make the hundreds of millions of dollars. And there are probably people here, even in our own group, making the same old tired arguments we've heard over and over again. People that just like to squawk and parrot what they've heard before. Well, the university's benefiting by the tune of billions of dollars from what these kids are doing on the field. Shouldn't they benefit too? Oh, I never heard that one before. Number one, as I said, they are benefiting with the $200,000 to $250,000 scholarship. 2, if the world were real and everything wasn't so corrupt, you can easily make the argument that all that money that comes in through the football program and through the basketball program can be used to enhance the lives or the student experience of the other students and to give those truly in need, those that come out of Cabrini Green in Chicago that don't have the money to go to Northwestern to pay for their education. Don't just say the university's benefiting, so the students should benefit. No, that should go to benefit students in need. Yeah, I know it doesn't all go there, obviously. I know people put money in their pocket. Do I have to state the obvious? But that's what it should be. That's the argument that makes sense. Sure, the football program at Penn State takes in billions of dollars or whatever, but that's how we allow all these other students to get an education through the 40 branch campuses. Where do you think anybody cares about Altoona campus or Johnstown campus or Ogon's campus? All this costs money, whatever. A lot of students go to those. They could make the argument if anything were real. I'm not saying it happens this way. Of course, the university system is not that much different than the corporate system. Corrupt, notnilC. This isn't my first conspiracy video. But if the world were real, you should easily be able to make the argument, well, yeah, billions of dollars come in. That allows 20,000 students a year to get an education for free. Is that really that much of a stretch to make that argument? Just want to parrot back to universities are benefiting, so the kids on the field should benefit. Really? Look, this is, as a reminder, proof of notnilC. In the end of the day, it's just one more example of something being imposed into society and culture that really doesn't benefit anybody except the system itself, something that no one that's participating in it directly should want, yet somehow it finds its way into society and culture when none of the main parties should want any bit of it. And not only does it eventually succeed, none of these parties along the way object. It just comes into being. Even the announcers going along, reminding people on every other play where the transfer came from. Nobody ever steps up. Nobody ever gets out of line. Nobody ever objects. Proof of notnilC. Yes, this is also potentially a series called Proof of Download. Thanks for listening.